Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 58 of the Nurtured by Nature podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined in conversation by Clare, a homeopath based in the UK and the founder of the Swift Homeopathy Clinic, an online clinic that gives people access to the advice and support of real homeopaths 24 hours a day when they are struggling with acute health conditions. Clare and I discussed the very real challenges facing healthcare provision in the UK as the NHS continues to struggle and patients find access to GPs harder and harder to come by. The way we advocate for ourselves and also learn to have responsibility for our health and well-being needs a shift in the current thinking within our society. Clare realised there was a way she could help people when they needed it most by giving them access to qualified, experienced homeopaths around the clock. Swift has brought together an amazing collective of over 20 homeopaths from around the world into a community that is able to support and serve both the patients and also the homeopaths. While Swift will hopefully become your first port of call for minor ailments, our conversation also explores the benefits of homeopathy as a valuable resource to tackle many physical and mental health challenges, and how working with homeopathy for anything from wasp stings to menopause will have the added benefit of helping you become better equipped to support both yours and your family's health as we strive to move from simply coping to thriving. Welcome, Clare, and thank you so much for joining us today on the Nurtured by Nature podcast. I'm really looking forward to talking to you today and sharing with everyone what you do, and which is a subject that I'm very passionate about, homeopathy. But just to get us started, I'd like to I always ask my guests to share a little bit about their nature story. So it can just be a little bit about how nature's been part of your life or any fond memories that you'd like to share to get us started.
Okay, well, thank you for having me, Fiona. It's lovely to be here. My nature story, I think I've got some really fond memories of being a child and being in nature all the time. I remember being 7, 8, 9 years old. The summers seemed to be so long then. The sun always seemed to be shining. The world seemed to be a wonderful place for me. And I remember being out with friends, just playing, and endless days just being out in nature. And actually just thinking about those times, it brings an overwhelming warmth and happiness to me. Yeah, I think I've always been an outdoorsy kind of person. That's not to say that on a really windy, horrible, rainy, cold day, I'm not snuggled up indoors on the sofa. But just this weekend, we had that horrible storm that came across the UK.
Oh, yeah, it was pretty wild.
It was a bit hectic, wasn't it? And so many people have suffered really, really badly. And that's really not at all good. But down here where I am on the south coast, we had some really, really strong winds. And for some reason, I felt really drawn to just be out in the wind. Can't explain what that was about. So I grabbed my dog and went out and walked and walked and walked and stayed out in this wonderful wind for 5 hours. It's just, it was just invigorating and so refreshing, and quite literally, as I said earlier, quite literally, metaphorically and physically, it really did blow the cobwebs out. It gave me an opportunity to feel more grounded. And when I came home, I felt quite energized, and I felt like I had more clarity about me. I've just spent 5 hours in my own head, just with the wind.
I think the wind's quite an interesting kind of thing to experience, isn't it? And there's so many little like phrases in our society and our language that talk about the winds, don't they? I mean, the winds of change, for example, and it's just there is this sort of, I don't know, it's sort of cleansing in a way, isn't it? It clears out the dead wood, and we do need it. I mean, I find the wind quite unsettling. I think in my sort of early childhood we had those big gales in the 80s, and I kind of I have sort of memories of that, all these massive trees being blown down and things. But it is an interesting element to experience, isn't it? And it can leave you feeling really energized as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Just for me, I think it's just the wonder of Mother Nature, full stop. The wind, the rain. I mean, Mother Nature can be quite volatile, and maybe it was just a little reminder of being within
Yeah.
Mother Nature and accepting and embracing what she brings us and what is around. Sometimes I think we fight these things too much, so on that day, I did what I felt I needed to do, which was be out there and experience it.
Yeah, I think it can keep us like you mentioned grounded, didn't you? And I think it's
Mm.
experiencing something that's so much bigger and more powerful than ourselves gives us that perspective as well, doesn't it, on life?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was really quite calming. You're saying that nature and some of our ferocious storms and that can be really, really scary. You're right. But on Sunday, it just felt really calming. It was a really lovely therapeutic few hours out in the
Yeah.
wind. It wasn't quite so funny when it started to rain as well, but it was the wind was lovely.
Yeah. Oh, you've encouraged me. Next time we have the wind, I'm gonna remember this story and try and go out and embrace it with a slightly different attitude now to see what messages and wisdom it can share.
Give it a go. It
Yeah.
was fantastic.
Oh, well, it's that's such a lovely story to get us started. But I just and I guess it's a lovely way to tie into to what you're offering as well with the winds of change, as it were. And you have an incredible clinic that you've put together to help people. Do you want to share a little bit more about what you've created recently?
Sure. So myself, I've well, I say I've done it. The clinic is called Swift Homeopathy Clinic, and it is a 24-hour online clinic that is offering consultations for what we call acute conditions. Um, Acute conditions are things that are minor ailments, things like coughs, colds, flu, tonsillitis, earaches. We consider them to be minor ailments. They're ailments that usually they're self-limiting. They will eventually correct in time, but actually it can be really uncomfortable to wait
Yeah.
2, 3, 4 weeks for them to correct. So, yeah, this Swift Homeopathy Clinic is available so that anytime, day or night, wherever you are in the world, you can just tap in to the website, and within minutes, you are speaking with a real homeopath, a live homeopath who's going to be able to talk to you and give you some advice. Um, and then we get into the Zoom room and they have a consultation. So you actually end up being face to face with the person.
Oh, incredible. So yeah, rather than a lot of these things have sort of moved over to AI, haven't they? And which obviously is great and it has its place, but there's no sort of substitute for actually having that support of a person face to face, really listening and engaging with you.
Absolutely. And it's really lovely for us as a homeopath to be able to see the patients and the clients as well, because it gives us extra clues as to what they're experiencing and how they're experiencing things. So I think the face-to-face element of what we're offering is really, really, truly important. I really don't think you can get the full case feeling with a telephone call.
No,
So
no, I'd
it was
agree with you.
important.
I think there are, I mean, obviously you're reliant on what the person shares, but equally, if you're face to face with them, you can see how they're sort of, perhaps if they've got symptoms like a cough or something, you can see and hear for yourself how it's affecting them, and as well, sort of other body language tells that will give an indication of how they're feeling and coping.
Yeah, absolutely. Body language is something people really can't hide. So if they are really distressed or it's really bothering them, if they're feeling really teary, and you can see all the emotions going across their faces, it's really helpful. And yeah, the cough is a great example actually, because if you can actually hear someone's cough, when you actually say to people, can you describe your experience of your cough? How does it feel? Where is the cough?
Yeah.
Where does they look at you and they're like, it's just a cough.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, but it's not. I need to know a bit more about that cough. Is it low down in your chest? Is it in your throat? Um, are you producing anything? I'll probably ask them 20 questions around the cough, and they look back at me like, it's just a cough.
Yeah. I think
But
that's for me was like one of the biggest differences I found when I first sort of came across homeopathy and had my first sort of consultations, both for myself and my pets, my horses, was just the depth that the consultation goes into. And I think if you've never had that sort of kind of, I guess, I mean, it sort of does bridge across a lot of the like complementary therapies that the practitioners do sort of delve that bit deeper. But if you've never really ventured into that realm and you've just had sort of conventional GP appointments where it's, bless them, they do the best they can, but they are quite time limited. They're literally, they don't have time to delve into it. It is a really different experience to have someone who just wants to know so much about you, really, I suppose.
absolutely, it is completely different, and that's probably one of the biggest obstacles that we face as homeopaths, trying to educate the world into having homeopathic treatment instead of allopathic. You're right, the GPs, they do a great job. They really do, but they only get 6 minutes to talk to
Wow.
any one patient,
Yeah.
and they have a quote. They need to get people moving through quickly. It is about money. Unfortunately, they get paid per person they see.
Yeah.
Clinics are run as businesses, which you would expect, but it does mean that patients are sometimes left feeling unheard, perhaps misunderstood, and they come out with perhaps medication that it may or may not be particularly suited. It might not be quite right, but they will stick with it and go back for more visits, and then they're on that journey
Yeah.
of that medicine and trying to get it right. And the difference with homeopathy is we start off by giving you the time to start with. So if talking about full consultations now, which is a little bit different to what Swift is offering, but in general, homeopathy, if you have a full consultation, your first initial consultation is going to be over an hour,
Wow.
and maybe an hour to an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And yet the homeopath is going to ask you some really deep questions and, different questions. And lots of people find it really hard
Yeah.
to accept. They're not used to being asked
Getting
these
that
kind
much
of
attention
questions.
almost in a way, isn't
Hmm.
it? And we're not, I guess I found it for me, it like, it made me start having a much deeper awareness about myself and my own health. So I think that's an important part of the journey for people as well.
Oh, for sure. This homeopathy is about people taking responsibility for their own health, actually. And in our current system, we're not encouraged to do that. We have a headache. We have been conditioned. You take a paracetamol and the headache goes away. Um, and that works, and that has a place. Of course, it does. Um, but with homeopathy, we're sort of a bit more interested in, well, okay, why have you got the headache?
Yeah.
Where did it come from? What else was going on for you when you got the headache? Tell me about the specific location of the headache. Um, and so therefore we ask a lot more detail, because ultimately we've got 3,000, probably more remedies that we
Yeah.
can choose from to give to that person. And actually, just to say that everybody's an individual, and that's the added thing with homeopathy. Everybody is treated as an individual. So you could come in with the headache, and 10 other people could come in with the headache, but you'll all experience that headache in a different way.
Yeah.
And homeopathy, your homeopath will question you individually, and you will all end up taking 10 different remedies, because it's individualized to you and the person you are. So we're not just, we don't have a stock of headache pills and a
Yeah.
stock of indigestion pills. we have remedies that work in those areas, but within that we individualize it and make it specific for you, which is I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's what the huge benefit of your consultations is, because it's realizing that you can, I mean, obviously homeopathy is available to people. There are places that you can go and get sort of the more common, I suppose, remedies that can be quite useful in sort of first aid situations, and you are able to sort of experiment and treat yourself with a little bit of knowledge. But actually having the guidance of a trained homeopath at the end of the phone, or sorry, on a Zoom call, is really worth its weight in gold, actually, to give you the confidence that you are trying the remedy that is probably is most suited to your specific circumstances and your symptoms.
Yeah, definitely. To separate the two out, we have in homeopathy the acute cases, which we, as I said earlier, are the short-term illnesses that will eventually heal themselves. And we have the chronic conditions. The chronic conditions is where you are going to need to interact with a homeopath over a period of time. It's going to be an ongoing treatment plan,
Yeah.
depending on what your condition is and how long you've had it and what treatment you already have had or are taking for it. That can be a longer ongoing journey. When we look at the acutes, home prescribing is becoming really, really popular,
Yeah.
and it actually is great. Like I said earlier, it's giving people the ability to take responsibility for their own health. And yes, you can easily buy a kit from any of the homeopathic pharmacies. They all have a kit. And in there, you're going to get 20 or 30 remedies that you can use for everyday first aid and everyday common ailments.
Yeah.
And they all have little booklets in them. And very quickly, you will get used to which remedies work for which members of your family. Because there is this within homeopathy, we have a phrase, and it's called constitutional. And
Okay.
that is a suggestion that every person has a constitutional remedy. It's a remedy that is perhaps their core, is their center. And whenever they're feeling poorly, their constitutional remedy will help them. It might
Regardless
not,
of the symptoms, perhaps.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then you can work around the symptoms by giving other intercurrent remedies. Um, so that's another method or one method that we use as homeopaths to prescribe.
So you have a remedy that helps you stay like really sort of at the top of your game, as it were, and in a time that you're sort of knocked off of that, then you can use your constitutional remedy, and hopefully that gets you back on track. And if not, then you can sort of reach out to things that may be more specific, or
Absolutely. Yeah,
alternatively, if you don't know your constitutional remedy, then you can work with the symptoms that you're experiencing at the time.
absolutely. I mean, personally, I believe that our constitutional remedy changes as we develop and
Yeah.
change ourselves as a person. So I don't think you are born one particular type, although you can have traits of a particular remedy throughout your life.
Yeah.
But I think your need for different remedy changes. And sometimes you will go through a phase where one particular remedy is your core remedy and it suits you for a long, long time. And then all of a sudden it doesn't because something has shifted. And actually, that's part of the process of homeopathy. It's about healing the whole person.
Yeah.
So whilst one remedy may help you for your headache, whilst you're taking it, you may also find that it helps you sleep better.
Yeah.
You may also find that it helps with that nagging pain in your back you've had for a long time. Undoubtedly, 100% of the time, what I hear from clients that I'm treating, certainly in chronic conditions, is that I came to you because I had bad menopause symptoms and my hot flushes were dreadful. And you've sorted my hot flushes, but also my bloating's gone. I'm sleeping better. My joints don't hurt as much. And actually, with one or two remedies, I've cleared 3 or 4 things for them, and
Yeah,
well, their body has cleared it, and the remedies have facilitated that. So
yeah,
that's always great.
yeah.
But
I
then
love
obviously
that.
you get other patients that come in and say, no, absolutely nothing's changed. That doesn't work at all. And then you sit them down, okay, let's just go through what you came with in the first place. And you start going through the list. Oh, so you were having hot flushes. Oh yeah, no, I don't have those anymore. Oh, okay. And you couldn't sleep. Yeah, oh no, I'm sleeping okay now. And you had really bad indigestion. Oh yeah, no, I haven't had that. You had an upset tummy, lots of diarrhea. Oh no, I've been absolutely fine. And then you say to them, okay, but you feel nothing has changed. And it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, it really has, hasn't it?
Yeah,
Some people, they just get caught up in living their lives that they don't actually recognize
yeah.
the subtle changes that happen with homeopathy.
Yeah, I think we're all guilty of that, aren't we, in our hectic lives that, and I think sometimes as well, sometimes I mean at this point we're talking about chronic conditions rather than the acute conditions that your clinic specifically helps, but I guess all of your homeopaths, you might come to you for an acute condition and then realize actually I've got a few other things like you were talking about menopause symptoms, and people can go on and work with you in a more detailed way beyond that, which is another amazing thing about it, isn't it? Is it's a nice entry point to homeopathy for people to see and experience it for themselves. And but it can just, I think in our hectic lives we can just get sort of used to suffering and struggling with things as well, don't we? And then it sort of just becomes almost habit that like, oh, that's what we're dealing with. And then like you said, it's nice to have that almost accountability of someone to go back to and say, well, you were really struggling with this, and then they're like, oh, actually hang on, yeah, that's resolved itself, brilliant. And perhaps there's other elements that then they sort of need to work through. There's other sort of symptoms that were less sort of in your face that they still need to resolve, but actually you're sort of working through things together.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly on the chronic cases, it becomes a journey. And whilst they will always come with that um, symptom that is particularly troublesome to them,
Yeah,
they're going to be in order. You will find that we work through and other symptoms come to the forefront that perhaps before you'd never even noticed. But it's all part of the body healing in its holistic way.
yeah,
And the body is very, very good at giving us signals and signs. I just think, as you said, we're maybe not so good at listening to them. And I just think historically we're not conditioned to listen. We are too busy. Just like you say, we've become very adept at just putting up with things,
yeah. I was going to say
actually, and
coping.
accepting.
Coping was the
Yeah,
word. Yeah,
yeah, that's a good word. Coping is a great word.
yeah,
It really is. But I like your point about the fact that the Swift Homeopathy Clinic, in dealing with the acutes, is absolutely a gateway. It is giving people the opportunity to try homeopathy for a smaller, sort of lesser condition. Um, they can get used to how they take the
yeah,
remedies and how they need to think about their body, how they need to just take some time to assess what is happening. And it's a great introduction. It really is. And so we all of the homeopaths on the clinic team, they all do offer full consultations as well. So you're absolutely right. Come and have an acute, absolutely feel the benefit of homeopathy, and then have a think about how could this help me for something else that's going on in my life.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
I love that because I think, I mean, sadly for me, I mean, I sort of I'd always been aware of homeopathy, things like arnica, from a very young age. But I guess it was really my horse he was quite ill, and sort of conventional mainstream medicine ran out of options for him, and it was then that I turned to homeopathy. And I think there is a bit of that tendency in society is that these sort of modalities are still quite marginalized, and people wait until like they've exhausted conventional medicine to then turn to it, and often they still get amazing results even though it's a sort of last chance saloon kind of way that they've come to it. And what I love so much about the Swift clinic that you've put together is actually it would be so much nicer if people had this opportunity to come to it when with sort of these more minor ailments and realize what a hugely powerful modality it is to support people with their health and their health journey and wellness throughout their life. And it's I think for me, one of the things I love about using homeopathy is it is really empowering to be able to do something. Because sometimes when you've got like a minor ailment, conventional medicine, apart from perhaps, giving you a pain relief, so I think quite often doesn't have a huge amount of things for you to do and take. Or sometimes it's just literally controlling the symptoms rather than trying to actually return you to health. And whereas homeopathy is just has this vast array of things. I mean, I was thinking when you were talking about first aid, I was thinking I've got a first aid kit, and I was thinking, what have I used it for in like the last 6 months? And it was like my partner burnt his arm on lighting a barbecue, and it's like we got the homeopathy out for that. I got stung by a wasp in the garden, and the homeopathy came out for that. And sort of my dog got bitten by a tick, or it had a little tick bite, homeopathy for that. Yes. And coughs and colds or upset stomachs while you're away. And there's just it's just this amazing resource. And they're quite cheap as well. That's another thing I love about it, is you can have these little bottles that give you something that you can do in the immediate instant when you perhaps like my partner burnt his arm, or I got stung by a wasp, and it's like I was immediately within sort of 5 minutes taking a homeopathic remedy, and amazing. The results is just incredible. I mean, my wasp sting was actually on the palm of my hand, and I've been stung quite a few times by wasps, and I won't have anaphylactics, but I get quite a lot of localized swelling. Okay. And it was amazing. Like the swelling just never came up. And I just literally had this sort of red pinprick like mark for a few days afterwards, but I just literally I had all the sort of localized tingling and sensation of sort of burning, but I never had any swelling at all. And I was just like, wow, this is amazing. Having had like a dozen wasp stings in my life, I was like, actually this was a real difference. I really saw the difference that homeopathy made in treating that. Brilliant.
And you're right, if you've got like I said, that all of the UK homeopathic pharmacies, they all have their own kits. If you have a first aid kit at home and you can instantly give something, almost immediately, the healing effect that has is truly amazing. The fact that you can start it so quickly. If you were using allopathic medicine and you had to go to the pharmacy or you had to make an appointment to see the doctor, it's going to be hours before you start any treatment. But with these homeopathic kits, you can actually start it instantly, and that can sometimes make all the difference, and stop things actually from progressing into being anything more uncomfortable for you. So I absolutely advocate having the home kits. They are a great resource to have at home. And then what I would say is this is where Swift perhaps will come into its own, because there are going to be hundreds of conditions, hundreds of things that you can use a first aid kit for. You've just named a good half a dozen or so, but there's always going to be a time when something's going to happen and you're going to look at that kit and think, I have got no idea what to do with that. It's the middle of the night, your child has been screaming, they've got tummy ache, or perhaps they've got an earache, something that you're tired and exhausted yourself, and you're looking at this kit and you just don't know where to go. That's when you call Swift.
Yeah.
That's when you can talk to a homeopath, and they will ask you some very specific symptom questions based on what's going on, and they'll be able to guide you and say, okay, start with this remedy, and tell you how to take it, how often to take it. And the other good thing about Swift, well, there's lots of amazing things about Swift, but one of the extra bonuses is that once you've had the initial consultation with one of the homeopaths, you actually get 48 hours of follow-up care.
Oh, brilliant.
So that for 48 hours you have got contact with the same homeopath who now knows your situation, and will continue to help and guide you through that time. And if after 48 hours the condition is still not resolved, or it hasn't resolved enough, there's the option to maintain that contact with that homeopath. And I think that's an amazing resource, because you build a rapport with your homeopath. You are going to build up a connection, and that's when the healing really starts to pour. Actually, once you get that lovely rapport with somebody, it's great.
And I think it's really important as well, because I think as you gain more confidence in it, then you do, like, you become familiar with remedies and what can help you in sort of those acute first aid situations. But there's also times when and some of that relies a little bit on not really intuition, but just being in touch with yourself. And sometimes if you're a bit run down, or things get a bit overwhelming for you, that having that support of someone who can just sort of sift through all of the noise for you, and just say, actually, no, hang on, you probably knew this, but actually this is what you need to do, is really valuable as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely times. I mean, certainly if you're suffering with something like a good old dose of flu, you just, if you can't lift your head off the pillow, how are you going to even begin to think what remedy's the best to use?
And how often to take it.
Exactly. But just having somebody, I mean, myself, I have a homeopath. I don't treat myself. I speak to my homeopath once every 6 weeks, and she gives me remedies just to keep me going for things that are happening in my life, and just to keep me ticking over. And then if I'm really poorly, if I do get a cough and a cold, or the flu, for instance, I have contact with them daily, just to make sure I'm taking the right remedies, and to follow through. Because as you go through the process of an acute condition, something like a cough and a cold and a flu, your symptoms will change. So you need to appreciate that you will need to change remedies. And that's something perhaps at home prescribing you miss. You give the first remedy, and it does or doesn't work, so you then react accordingly. But it's fair to say that you'll take one remedy that does something, and it moves your case to a different level, which needs a different remedy. And that's really important for people to understand, that it's not just one remedy cures all. We're treating the body as a whole. It's an holistic therapy that's trying to sort of bring balance back into an unbalanced system.
And well, you talk about an unbalanced system, and I think that's really where I see the value of homeopathy is, like, our in this, we're both in the UK, so we are blessed in many ways by having the National Health Service and this free healthcare available to people. But unfortunately, it's also under immense strain, and it's, as we mentioned earlier, with the doctors and their limited time that they have available. It is getting harder and harder for people to be able to see their GPs for these acute conditions as well. I think I know they introduced like 7 conditions that you have to go to a pharmacist, or a pharmacist can prescribe specifically for. But I think there's an even greater list of things that basically, if you phoned up your doctor's surgery, unless you were, particularly at risk, for example, as a patient, you just wouldn't be able to go to a doctor for support.
That's it. Yeah, the NHS released, I think it was back in July 22, a list of 35 conditions that you would not get treatment. You wouldn't be able to see a GP. You won't get a GP appointment for 35 conditions, and you are asked to go and visit your pharmacy and speak to your pharmacist about that, which is difficult for some people. Some of the conditions people just aren't happy to go and speak to a pharmacist about. And not everybody is happy to stand in the
public place.
queue. I mean, lots of pharmacies do have side rooms, which they would take, if you say you needed to talk, they would take you off to one side. But but yeah, I mean, but then that puts an awful lot of pressure on the pharmacies as well,
Yeah.
and they've got limited supply of what they can then give you over the counter to take. Um, and actually, that's where Swift is. It's going to bridge that gap, perhaps. It's giving people the opportunity to access a professional, a healthcare professional. All of the homeopaths on the Swift platform have all been through years of training.
Yeah.
It's not just somebody's decided to be a homeopath. They are actually qualified and registered with a governing body. They're all fully insured. These are professional healthcare people who can help you navigate what is happening for you at that particular time. But we're giving people the opportunity to do it in their own homes.
Yeah.
They don't have to go to the pharmacy. They can sit in the comfort of their own home. They might be feeling too poorly to even go out. So contact Swift. But they might be stuck in with like screaming kids and just can't get out of the house. So again, contact Swift. And and within minutes, you can be face to face with a professional who can talk you through and like I said, like we said at the beginning, they'll listen and they will be supportive for whatever the condition is you're needing help with.
I think that's a big thing that I think is perhaps underestimated, isn't it, in the healthcare and the challenges that we face in healthcare is like just the power of actually feeling seen and listened to and almost validated, I suppose, in like, that you aren't you aren't going mad. Like you can have those symptoms and it's not necessarily normal and there is something that you can do about it. And I think perhaps particularly for women, and I mean you mentioned menopause earlier, I think it can be a very difficult journey for women going through menopause, and there aren't potentially as many options as they would like in conventional medicine, and there is a lot more support that they can find in something like homeopathy to really help them navigate the winds of change.
Well, again, yeah, there you go. Is that winds of change again? Absolutely. Menopause is it's a tough time for lots of women. Lots of women sail through it quite nicely. It's a transitional time that all women are going to go through, and we need to embrace it and accept that it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
It is going to be. But you're right. The narrative right now in the allopathic field is HRT,
Yeah.
and for lots of benefits that it is supposed to reduce your risk of certain cancers and reduce your risks of other really nasty conditions. But then on the flip side, there is the idea that it actually causes those conditions, and it's a minefield. It really truly is.
Yeah.
It works brilliantly for some women, and I have patients myself who I treat who are taking the HRT. It works for them. They just need other support. And homeopathy works brilliantly alongside conventional medicine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it doesn't have to be either or. That's
no,
that's the thing, isn't it?
absolutely not. They can work really, really well together. And quite often taking something like the HRT is working on physical symptoms. People just need some more emotional support maybe, and homeopathy can beautifully slot in with that. But it also does alleviate the symptoms. And I have other patients who have chosen to possibly take a more natural route, and they only use homeopathy, and they feel equally as settled and happy that their symptoms are being contained and minimized.
Yeah.
And they are enabled to get on and live their life with their menopausal symptoms.
Well,
So
I
there's
think
no
that comes back
right or
to
wrong.
what you said earlier, didn't you? That everyone is unique, and that's how homeopathy and your consultations are. Is like, each person that comes to you is a complete individual, and that's why you need so much time with them, is to understand them as an individual, to be able to prescribe for them and to support them properly.
Yeah, absolutely. My husband often says it's the time. that you spend with people that is the most therapeutic.
Yeah.
He is. I'm not going to say he's my biggest fan because I'm not sure he is. In the nicest possible way. I
He has a
think
few cynical bones in his body, does he?
just a few. I think when I first started, he was a bit like, really? I'm not sure about that. I'm like, well, I've used it before I actually became a homeopath. I had used homeopathy for about 15, 16 years
Oh, wow. Okay.
for myself, and in particular, my daughter, who used to have recurring tonsillitis
Oh,
and was
wow.
from the age of about 8
Oh,
and was really poorly. And we got her through that at the same time as I was going through some um, mental health issues that I needed some guidance with. So homeopathy was absolutely amazing. My son and my husband, on the other hand, are not quite as embracing of it. Um, I do give my husband remedies, and if he were to take them more regularly, I'm sure he would see much more benefit. But he tries, bless him. But for him, he sees it as the fact that I give somebody an hour of time so that
Yeah.
and give them a safe space to just be. That in itself is a really large portion of the therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
They get that time to be in touch with themselves and connect.
Yeah. And yeah, and just it's that sort of community element again, isn't it? Of it's just so I think, and when you're ill as well, like, and I think that's the nice thing about the way you've set it up is that it is online and people can access you online. Because when you're, like you sort of mentioned flu or something, you don't want to, go out of the house necessarily. You don't want to be around people, and so even reaching out for support can be difficult, can't it? And actually, so therefore, being able to do this online at home, perhaps still in your pajamas or whatever it is, it does just make it more accessible to people as well.
Sure. And actually, do you know what? I've been doing acute practicing like this for a couple of years, and I've had lots of people that come onto the camera actually with all the lights turned off, and you can just see this shadow in the background, and they're like, I don't want you to see me. It's like, okay, well, that's fine. And they're laid in bed holding their phone, up,
Yeah.
and they are just feeling so poorly. And it is nice to know that we can help people when they are feeling at their absolute worst. Because quite often, again, if you are waiting to see a GP and you feel really bad in the middle of the night, something happens, but you've got to wait till 8 a.m. until the phone line
Yeah.
opens or the door opens. Um, Things have changed by then. And again, with homeopathy, if you've got the kit at home and you can take something at 2 o'clock in the morning when you are feeling at your worst,
Yeah.
that's when we can really help get those symptoms under control. And by 8 o'clock in the morning, you're already feeling better.
Yeah, I think I love that as well. That sense of actually being able to do something for yourself. I think that's it as well, is like because like we were talking about some of the conditions that you won't be able to see a GP for. And sometimes the advice is just to sort of go home and let it sort of ride itself out, really. And
Yeah.
actually, that yes, they are. I think you described it as self-limiting, so they potentially will just resolve themselves. But you could have quite a rough ride waiting for it to do that. And I think our society, we're not really educated either to advocate for our own health or even to have the tools and wisdom to know like the small things that we can do to support ourselves through these conditions that should sort of hopefully resolve themselves. But there are things that we can do that can make the journey a little bit easier
Oh,
and
for sure.
hopefully resolve it
Definitely.
even quicker as well, which is the other side of it.
Absolutely. And I think we're all so busy. Nobody's got time to be ill
Yeah.
now, is the other point. And everyone's looking for the quick fix. And, um, homeopathy can do that, even for the self-limiting conditions. For instance, say tonsillitis, a usual course would be 7 to 10 days, maybe 14 days. You're going to feel a bit poorly, and then maybe add on another 7 days for recovering afterwards. So from start to finish, you're going to feel pretty ropey and yuck for a good 21 days
Yeah.
if you just let it do its thing. With homeopathy, we can reduce that to maybe 5 to 7 days, or even 3 to 5 days, depending on how quickly. If we catch it earlier, we can stop it from progressing too deeply.
Yeah.
There are always going to be cases that even with homeopathy, even if we catch it early, it's still going to progress into being quite a severe case of tonsillitis. But the homeopathy will be supporting the vital force, the inner system of the body, and ultimately it is enabling the body to self-heal. We are innately designed to self-heal. And homeopathy really encourages that within the system. So we generally, I would say 99% of the time, I can honestly say people I've treated for acutes, I've had them back on their feet a good 3 or 4 days sooner than they would have been if they had just let it run its course.
Yeah. And the other side of it is as well, it's avoiding the unnecessary use of antibiotics, because obviously we are seeing more and more problems with antibiotic resistance to things as well. So if we can avoid taking them, but still support ourselves and hopefully heal, that's also beneficial as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yes, the studies now show, don't they, that we have certainly overused antibiotics in our healthcare up until this point, and actually now it's quite difficult to get antibiotics from a doctor. Maybe difficult's the wrong word. Maybe it's become more. I'm not quite sure what the right word would be, but because we're aware now that that isn't actually the answer,
Yeah.
we're using it more appropriately,
Yeah.
perhaps, as a medication. So. But every day's a school day. We have to learn these things, and so it's research has allowed us to realise that that's a problem. And we've got some amazing research that goes on with homeopathy as well, just to add some scientific evidence behind it. It's a great system of medicine. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that homeopathy has often had a bad rap, hasn't it? I did do a lovely episode with a homeopath probably about 6 months ago, Eugenie, who we both know, and we did talk a bit more extensively about sort of the origins of homeopathy and a lot of the science that is now being done to really sort of support it and show that actually, it's not woo woo and off the charts, and it is, properly, there is lots and lots of scientific evidence there. But do you want to just touch on that a little bit for people now, sort of a bit of the history of homeopathy and some of your information about homeopathy?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I did just want to say, actually, just to add about clients that I see and people that I treat. I am amazed every day when I give somebody a remedy and it facilitates their body to heal. And they message me or they contact me and they're telling me their symptoms have gone and they're feeling better. And it still it just amazes me that this little sugar pill that I've given put a remedy onto has affected the change that it has.
Yeah.
And I love the disbelief of people, like, what, that one little sugar pill? Yeah, but every day I'm amazed by it. And when I take it for myself, and when I took it for myself, the very first time I took it, I was absolutely skeptical. Yeah, but that's not going to work, is it? And it did. So it blows my mind on a daily basis. I'm working with Swift, we're doing a lot of the acute stuff, but like if I'm working with people and their chronic conditions, and the ongoing relief you can bring to people is just phenomenal. But so with regards to sort of background of homeopathy, wow, yes, where did it come from? 200 years ago, over 200 years ago. German doctor, Dr. Hahnemann, discovered. He was actually a proper doctor, a fully qualified medic, and got disheartened with the quite barbaric
Practices of the era.
practices of exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, and thought that there could be another way. And it was whilst he was translating some books that he became aware of some other of homeopathy, or some other ideas maybe, and it led him to look into it in a bit more detail. Um, but I do think actually from where we came from him, and from the masters of that time, other people around him, Kent and Burnett, and all the other great master homeopaths, they were very much classically give one remedy and wait and see how it works, and
Yeah.
which was great. I think in our current modern world, I do think we have to think about prescribing differently. I myself am classically trained.
Yeah.
So I have a very classical background, but I also see patients in my clinic with needs who, and I'm looking at them thinking, in this instance, I can't just give you one remedy and wait 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the right approach. And
Yeah.
so what I'm really thankful for in homeopathy is that since our founder 200 odd years ago, there have been other homeopaths that have developed different techniques
Yeah.
that are now much more useful in our modern world.
Yeah, I think that's important, isn't it? Is an evolution of it as well to, our lifestyles and our society, have changed drastically in the last 20 years, let alone like 200 years. So yeah, it's important to adapt it to modern society, modern challenges. You've mentioned a few times sort of mental health as well. I mean, that's a huge sort of pandemic in its own right, isn't it? Of people, the challenges that people have faced. I don't. I mean, obviously, always people have had the issues. Right? There's a growing awareness around it as well, I think now, which is also bringing it to the fore. And homeopathy offers a lot of support in those cases as well.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And all of our remedies have different aspects to them. So you can be treating somebody for one specific symptom, and that remedy doesn't just deal with that one specific symptom. It has a whole, we call it the doctrine of signatures. It has a whole picture, and that's why we see people saying, "Oh, I came in for you to help my arthritis, and now suddenly I'm sleeping better and my appetite's improved, and other things have happened," because each remedy has got an affinity with different parts, and for each individual can work differently. It starts to get really involved then. But I mean, one of our books, our Materia Medica, which lists all of the remedies in, you pick a remedy. You mentioned arnica, and so you think of arnica because you've had a bump, you've got a bruise, or you've had an accident, so you give arnica. But arnica helps with so many other things. If you look it up in the Materia Medica, it's got things under all different headings: the head, the tummy, the chest, the female, the male, individual things, tongues, eyes, nose. It goes through. It does work for all different aspects of the body. So again, that's a little bit mind-blowing. But all of the remedies have that in them. So they all have that ability to help with different areas of the body. So I think it's quite acceptable now in this day and age to maybe give 2 remedies, 2 or 3, that are going to work nicely together to bring some more balance and comfort to the patient. I'm not going to say more quickly, but perhaps more effectively.
Yeah.
For what they're going through at the moment. I don't know that our conditions we have now are any worse than I mean, back in the day, Hahnemann was facing some really, really nasty diseases. Syphilis and gonorrhea and all of that.
Yeah.
It was massive. But I just think for our time now, I think it's acceptable in certain cases to give a couple of remedies to just facilitate that healing for that person. I'm going to be shot down now by every single classical homeopath listening to this. Um, there is still room for classical homeopathy. I'm just saying, I personally feel there is a need for us to be flexible.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good lesson for us in everything, isn't it? Not just in homeopathy. I think it is this, that it's not everything's going to work for everyone. Everyone is an individual. Part of why I wanted to bring you on here was to talk more about homeopathy and how it can help people. And if you're listening and you've never heard about homeopathy before, that I'll share links to my previous episodes so that you can go and have a look. We'll have links to Clare's amazing Swift Homeopathic Clinic, and I think you're a collaboration of over 20 homeopaths now, aren't you? So it's quite
Yeah,
it's quite a big organized, well, not a big organization, but it's a lovely collective of people working together, offering support.
and that's absolutely it. It is exactly that collaboration. I think that's why I was stumbling over my words at the beginning, because whilst, yes, I did start the clinic, I have gathered an amazing team around me, and without them, there would be no Swift. So they come from all walks of life. Prior to being homeopaths, they've got some amazing experiences that brought them to homeopathy. We have some colleagues in the USA who are working with us. We have colleagues from Slovakia,
Oh,
um,
wow.
Poland, Ukraine. Where else? I'm trying to think of. I apologise to all of my team if I've forgotten any of your origins, um, but they are just an absolutely fantastic group of women who are dedicated to providing homeopathy in the way Swift is offering it. Um, and actually, just aside from what we're offering to clients, actually, just to talk about it from a homeopath point of view, one of the other reasons I wanted to do something like Swift is because being a homeopath can actually be quite a lonely profession,
Yeah,
particularly now we're all sat at home behind our screens and doing
yeah,
everything on Zoom.
yeah,
Um, you don't interact with people um, in a in the same way anymore. So I wanted to give homeopaths a place where they could be part of a team,
yeah,
and they could have people to lean on and people to help them, and have a just that be part of that collective,
yeah.
actually like-minded people sort of rubbing along together with the same ideas. It's and it has been amazing.
And
They've
innovating together as well, like you said, allowing your own practice to evolve and grow and your own understanding to grow from having that benefit of all of these different people.
Yeah, definitely. And I said to all of them from the beginning, I'm not an expert on anything. I'm passionate about homeopathy, but I'm absolutely happy to listen and be taught by anyone else that knows, something more than I do. And I've invited them to be involved in that way. If there's a certain topic that we're talking about and I don't know anything about it and they do, please take the floor. And we will all learn from each other. And that has already been happening. And that they are so lovely and supportive to each other. We've got a range of homeopaths that have been qualified for maybe every 20 years.
Wow.
So a huge amount of experience.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of homeopaths that have only been qualified for a year. And I actually, one somebody did ask me the question, well, actually, that's not quite right, is it? How can you have somebody's only been qualified a year? How can they be a very good homeopath? And my answer to that was actually, they're the best homeopaths because they are fresh out of college. They've got all the enthusiasm, they've got all the fresh knowledge, and the latest teachings.
Yeah.
They haven't got stuck in any ways. They are open and honest about their trade. So
Yeah.
for me, I think they are the best homeopaths. And I think maybe some of the older homeopaths that are with us, the ones that have been working a lot longer, they're benefiting from that because they are being taught some modern ideas.
Yeah.
And so the mix is beautiful. I think it works
Yeah,
brilliantly.
I love that. I think obviously there is like an amazing um power from experience, and the wisdom gained from decades is not to be sniffed at by any stretch of the imagination. But
Absolutely.
it's always important for all of us, I think, in whatever sphere or aspect you're talking about, industries and things, to always remember that everyone is valuable and everyone has something that they can share, and we can gain wisdom from that. And I think, particularly with the challenges that we're facing in society and around the world at the moment, it's really important to not get stuck in that rut of thinking like experience has all of the answers. And sometimes, these, like you said, people who are younger and passionate, and they have just they might just have a different way of looking at something, and they can bring as much to the table as people who've got the years and years of wisdom. And we just need everyone, really. I mean, it's a common common theme that I have with many of our guests is, it does need everyone. I mean, there's a great saying in Africa, it takes a village to raise a child. And I think, that's
Yes.
the same thing here. And it's just that idea of like different perspectives, different support networks, collaboration, and just, you know, uh, the ideas all bubbling up together of how you see things, and people's ideas sparking ideas in you. And yeah, I think I love that. I love everything about what you've put together, Claire. I hope it's going to
Thank
reach
you.
out to many more people. I think it's really desperately a service that's needed in our society at the moment. I think it really does provide a valuable service to people. I will have all of the details in the show notes so people can go and look it up, make sure they bookmark it on their phone for if they need it in the future. They are in a situation where they might need you, or also to get in touch with you as well if they've got a more chronic condition that they want to explore working with a homeopath and seeing what they can do to hopefully alleviate things and feel more of a return to wellness. But is there anything
Certainly.
that you'd like to leave people with today, Claire, as we wrap up? Any sort of information or wisdom you'd like to share?
Any wisdom? Oh, I don't think I have wisdom.
Well, I can
It just would
dispute
be.
that. We've been talking for an hour and you've shared lots of wisdom. So
Okay. I think it's just take responsibility for your own health,
yeah,
actually, and
really
try and
important.
break free of the convention that we've become enclosed in.
Yeah,
Break free and consider alternatives.
yeah,
Um, there are always there's always more than one way, actually, and I think it's time for us all now um, to embrace the natural. We can maybe we've tried some of the conventional stuff and it hasn't quite worked. So um, yeah, have a look at the alternatives. There's something out there for everyone, and it is just about embracing it and being able to open your mind to the possibilities that there's more out there that can help us in a better way,
yeah. I think
maybe.
I think that's beautiful, and I think it touches on the fact that that there are challenges and there are different approaches, and it's finding what works for you and not being afraid to try something different from the sort of norm that we've been conditioned into.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I do agree with that, and I think actually there was just one thing I was going to add. You mentioned earlier about people coming to homeopathy as a last ditched attempt. Um, and I just wanted to share with you that in homeopathy, we actually have an acronym for that, and we call it TEETH. And it stands for Tried Everything Else, Try Homeopathy.
Yeah,
Um, because quite often we do get people who are just at the end of the
yeah,
road, and we then pick them up and put
yeah.
them back on their journey.
Yeah, and they become the biggest converts, and it's like the sort of the born again Christians who go out and preach to the rest of the world,
And that's
like
what we
myself
need.
included.
Yes, and that's what we need. We need loads of people going out there and preaching it, and singing from the rooftops how fantastic it is, and sharing their positive experiences, and actually even sharing their negative experiences, because
That's where
I
we
don't know.
grow. Yeah,
There you go. I don't think there is a negative.
yeah,
From every negative there is a positive, because actually you learn.
yeah,
You learn from the negatives. So yes, let's shout it from the rooftops and say, "Come on, everybody, give it a
yeah,
go.
yeah. Perfect.
Give it a go."
Oh, well, thank you so much, Claire. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today. I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, I hope lots of people will reach out to you and make use of your amazing team's depth of wealth of wisdom in the future.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. It's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed chatting, and let's hope that we Swift can hopefully help many people on their journey to health and well-being.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to the Nurtured by Nature podcast. I truly hope this conversation has brought some hope and inspiration into your life. I would love to have these messages ripple out across the world. So if you can, please share this episode with your friends, leave a review on your favourite podcast player, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. I would love to hear from you, so please feel free to connect with me on the links provided in the podcast description. But most importantly, thank you so much for being a part of this journey with me. But don't forget to simply get out there and enjoy the natural world.